A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Today's the day for our breaking news out of Israel and the Middle East. I'm joined by Mandy Worby. Mandy, welcome to the studio today.
Hello, it's nice to be here.
Mandy, things are heating up on Israel's northern border with Lebanon and the terrorist group Hezbollah. What's happening there?
Oh, what's not happening there? Before we jump into what's just happened, you will remember that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Bibi, spoke to the US Congress. His speech went over very, very well. Tellingly, Vice President Kamala Harris boycotted it and didn't go, which is kind of telling.
Yep.
But he was very well received, being awarded 50 standing ovations. And let me just tell you, look, everybody knows Americans are very generous with their standing ovations, but 50 is still a lot. Okay, that's a lot.
Well, it's more than or about the same amount as the Democrat politicians who refused to be there. I think there was about 50 of them that didn't turn up for that, as well as Kamala Harris.
How telling is that? How telling. I know Rashida Tlaib did, and she sat there with the keffiyeh scarf around her holding up a sign saying war criminal, which is the height of disrespect that should never have been allowed, but that's another talking point. But a few hours after delivering his address to the joint houses of Congress, Kuwait's Al Jarida newspaper printed an article claiming that Iran has provided Hezbollah with electromagnetic pulse weapons, and they cited a source from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Quds Force. The newspaper stated that the devices that are now in Hezbollah's hands are capable of neutralising Israel's radars and communication system. Now, I got this from an article written by Caroline Glick. She is an Israeli Jewish journalist, and she is highly, highly, highly reputable, and I thoroughly recommend her to anybody. She has a video podcast, and she writes a lot. She's does a lot of speaking tours, interviews. She's remarkable. She actually used to be, I think, the chief editor of the Jerusalem Post for a while. But she wrote this article. I read it on Israel National News. Now, EMP, I don't know if you know anything about the EMP power, electromagnetic pulse.
Yeah, I've heard about it, yeah.
It
disables things.
It's as devastating as a nuclear blast. They say it would be like having a nuclear blast go up way up in the atmosphere, and then it's not the nuclear fallout that does the damage. So it's not going to kill people. What it does is it completely wipes out any electrical equipment and their capacity. So which means you've got, first of all, no electricity. You've got no communications. You've got no internet. Your water systems are down.
Yeah.
Your banking system is down.
Well, modern cars are all electronic now.
All the stuff in your cars, it's all dead. Your phones, everything is gone. And also your defences, which means you can't see what's coming, you can't hear what's coming, and you don't know how to defend yourself. So Iran has apparently provided Hezbollah with drones with this electromagnetic pulse in their warheads and EMP bombs, some of which can be launched from stationary launch sites or vehicles, and others can be launched from drones. Supposedly, they'd be able to reach deep into Israeli territory, and you think, oh, wow, well, that's not far, because Israel, we've said this before, Israel is a tiny country. It would fit into Tasmania 3 times. Man. That's how little Israel is. It's tiny. And so even without this information, Bibi explained to Congress that the existential threat that Iran is, it's not only a threat to Israel, but the entire Middle East and to the whole world, because Iran has Islamic Messianic world domination in its sights. This is the ideology that drives it. It's the ideology that drives Hezbollah, and it's the ideology that drives the Houthis, and it's the ideology that drives Hamas and Islamic Jihad and the Muslim Brotherhood, right? All those have this same ideology. So Bibi went further, saying that he wanted America and Israel to forge a security alliance in the Middle East to counter this growing Iranian threat. And he's also calling on all countries that are in peace with Israel and those countries who will make peace with Israel so that they should be invited to join this alliance. And he described how that when peace-seeking nations work together, they can actually destroy the Iranian threat. And he reminded them of the 350 missiles that Iran launched at Israel back in April. I was there when it happened. And how all these surrounding nations worked together to eliminate that threat. And it was a failed attempt, right? So they could all work together, and he wants to call it the Abraham Alliance after the Abraham Accords, which was so successful in bringing out peaceful negotiations and relationships between Israel and three Middle East nations. So, again, Carolyn Glick wrote the article pointing out that Israelis might want to wait until the presidential elections to get something going here. But with this new article that's come out about the potential of Hezbollah having EMP weapons technology, who might want to try using that before the presidential elections in case Trump gets in, Israel may not be able to hold back. She may have to do something preemptively. But we will see. But then again, Hezbollah over the weekend may have just given Israel the impetus to take a stand and make a move.
Yeah, well, you'd hope that source in Iran who leaked that is just doing it to intimidate and scare Israel, because that is a scary thought for any nation.
Yes,
if someone has access to those sort of weapons, it will just disable, it sends everyone back to the Stone Age. But, you said what excuse, you said that Israel now has an excuse to go after Hezbollah. What's the excuse? What's going on there?
Well, if you haven't given the Olympics a break over the weekend, then quite possibly you will have known about the attack by Hezbollah into the Galilee, where they sent rockets in that killed 12, well, it started off as 12 Israeli children, but it's now 14 Israeli children. And initially, Hezbollah took responsibility for it, quite proud of themselves. However, I remember when I looked at the photo, just a still photo of where the attack took place, I'm going, that's an Arab town in the back, because Arab towns are very distinct in their layout, in how they look, the style of their homes, as opposed to the Jewish kibbutzim, as opposed to an ordinary Jewish community, as opposed to, say, what Jerusalem looks like. Arab communities and towns all over the Middle East have very distinct look, and I'm thinking, this is an Arab town. And then I went and read all the names of the children who had been murdered in this attack, all Arabs. And in fact, not just Arabs, but they are part of the Druze community. So the Druze community, they're Arab by heritage. They are not Muslims. They have a very secret religion. They are a closed community, as in they are a tribal community. They marry amongst themselves. You cannot marry into the Druze community. You cannot convert and become a Druze. They don't have a written holy book like we do. It's an oral religion that is passed on by the priests, but they are very, very loyal to the country they are in. So they love Israel. They're faithful. They serve in the IDF, in the security services. They become teachers and they become medics and doctors and all of that. They're very integrated in the community. Their chief prophet is Jethro, Moses' father-in-law. They have 5 prophets, which is why their flag is 5 colours representing the different prophets. I mean, it's fascinating.
It is, yeah.
But they're very hospitable people. They're really friendly. They're hardworking. They're devoted family people. And they've just been decimated. And Hezbollah is kind of walking it back a little bit because they realize, we've killed Arabs. But they don't care, because there were Druze and Bedouin and Muslims who were killed on October 7 as well, and Thai and all the rest of it. They don't care. But it was absolute butchery. These children were playing soccer. And so what's happening is that the Druze community and most Israelis are saying this is enough. They've got over 80,000 Israelis who are living as refugees in their own country. They can't live up on the north because of Hezbollah, and it's getting worse. And now with the threat of possible EMP technology, the Israelis are saying enough is enough. We've got to go in there. But do you remember I mentioned a few weeks ago about the 2,000-pound bombs that America since December has withheld from Israel, saying they didn't want to have American weapons used on Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Well, they were never going to use them in Gaza. The 2,000-pound bombs are suited to the rougher terrain in Lebanon. And they haven't been able to go in and deal with Hezbollah because they haven't had the weaponry. And so it reminds me of, and actually Bibi actually said this in his speech. He said to the American Congress, he said, Winston Churchill said in World War II, he spoke to the Americans, he said, give us the tools and we'll finish the job. And Bibi said, you give us the tools faster, we'll finish the job faster. So he's appealing to them for assistance, and now it's becoming imperative because he's standing, realistically, Israel is standing between its own annihilation, the overthrow and destruction of the Middle East and the whole world. They're this bulwark between us and the rest of the world.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, it's just awful, isn't it?
It is.
Little kids
I'll throw into the mix, you've got Erdogan in Turkey who's saying if Israel attacks Hezbollah, they're going to attack Israel. As soon as this attack happened, the whole world jumped up and said to Israel, restrain yourself, restrain yourself. What about Israel's security? What about her children? No other nation anywhere on planet Earth, Andrew, would be expected to just sit there and let their children be butchered by terrorists. Nobody would do that. Anyway.
It's true.
It's just frustrating.
It's another example of the hypocrisy of this world we live in. And just finally, what's happening with the anti-Semitism around the world? Is it beginning to wane or is it increasing?
I wish it was, Andrew. I wish I could say it was. But the news cycle's moved on. I mean, we've had the attempted assassination of former President Trump, the Olympic Games. Everybody's watching that. You know, the cycle's moved on. But the anti-Semitism actually is increasing. It's getting worse. Now, there's been two major elections take place in Europe. There was the UK elections, which saw the Conservatives obliterated. And let's be honest, they were pretty inept over the past, 12 years. They were in power, but they've had the Labor Party come in. The Labor Party has a reprehensible reputation for their anti-Semitic, anti-Israel policies, which they've already said they're going to impose, even though they've said, whoops, we're not anti-Semitic. Well, that remains to be seen. And there's a lot of fear amongst the Jewish community in the UK. And they're now rumbling that it might be time to leave. And a lot of them saying, actually, you need to get out quick. And then there was the recent French election. And the people themselves are moving towards the right. They're not happy with the woke carry-on. That's really just overwhelmed their country. And Marine Le Pen, who was a centre-right, not a hard right, she's centre-right, maybe a little more than centre-right, but she's not terrible. She actually won a majority and everybody thought, wow, she got power. But Emmanuel Macron, he actually did a deal to stay in power and actually aligned himself and has formed a coalition with three very, very hard left groups, the France Unbowed, the Socialists and the Greens. And forming this alliance, they've kept basically the will of the people at bay. And those three groups are rabidly anti-Israel, anti-Semitic. So there's a great deal of fear and uncertainty at the moment amongst the French Jews, and the expectation is that over the next weeks, months, and maybe the next year, there is going to be a massive move by Jews in the UK and France to make Aliyah and emigrate to Israel. So we'll be watching this space. But when October 7 happened and the explosion of anti-Semitism happened around the world, it became in the mind of the Jewish Agency, whom I spoke to, a beautiful lady named Danielle. And she said the expectation is that in the next year or so, 1 million Jews may want to make Aliyah to Israel.
Yeah, that's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
Mandy, so much going on as always, but I want to thank you so much for joining us again on 2020 Today.
My pleasure.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.